The scream of atmospheric entry always reminded Captain Vex Morven of home. Not the peaceful gardens of New Terra or the gleaming spires of Luna Station, but the burning streets of Mumbai during the water wars, when the sky itself seemed to weep acid rain. His ship, the Carrion's Gambit, shuddered as it descended through Kepler 442b's storm-racked atmosphere, its hull scarred by 1,000 battles, patched with salvage from a dozen dead civilizations. "Atmospheric composition is poison," reported Navigator Kira Volkov from her station, her voice carrying the flat acceptance of someone who'd breathed worse. "Sulfur compounds, methane storms, radiation levels that would cook a Centaurian in minutes." "Perfect," Vex muttered, watching the planet's surface resolve into view through the viewport. Jagged mountain ranges thrust up like broken bones, while vast chemical seas churned under a sickly yellow sky. Just like the old neighborhood, the planet below was a testament to cosmic violence, a world that had been beautiful once, before. Solar flares stripped away its magnetic field and left it to rot under stellar radiation. Now it served as a dumping ground for the Galactic Consortium's unwanted, a place where criminals, outcasts, and the genetically undesirable were sent to die slowly. Most species would look at such a world and see only death. Humans saw opportunity. The settlement they approached was called Grief's End, a sprawling maze of scavenged metal and spite that clung to the walls of a massive impact crater. Smoke and steam rose from its industrial heart, where human ingenuity had transformed poison into profit. The colonists here weren't the cream of Earth's crop. They were the dregs, the criminals, the broken ones that polite society had thrown away. They were also the most dangerous humans in the galaxy. "Landing clearance granted," came a gravelly voice over the comm. "Welcome to the armpit of existence, Carrion's Gambit. Try not to die on the way down." As they descended, Vex caught sight of the settlement's defenses. Weapons cobbled together from starship wreckage and industrial equipment, positioned with the cunning of predators who'd learned to turn every disadvantage into a weapon. Automated. Turrets tracked their descent with mechanical precision, while patrol craft flitted between the settlement's towers like angry wasps. The landing pad was a sheet of fused rock, blackened by countless ship exhausts and scarred by the occasional crash. As the Carrion's Gambit touched down with a bone-jarring thud, Vex could see the welcoming committee approaching, a mix of humans whose bodies bore the marks of hard living and harder choices. Leading them was a woman whose left arm had been replaced with military-grade cybernetics, her face a map of old violence. Intel had identified her as Riven Caulfield, formerly a sergeant in Earth's colonial marines before a court-martial for excessive brutality during the Titan uprising. Now she ran security for Grief's End and had turned the settlement into something that made corporate security forces wake up screaming. "Captain Morven!" she called out as he descended the ramp, her augmented voice carrying easily over the howling wind. "The Council of Bastards is waiting. They're curious about your proposal." Vex smiled, feeling the familiar weight of his sidearm against his hip. Around him, his crew took their positions, not the polished professionals you'd find on a consortium vessel, but survivors, each one carrying scars that told stories of worlds that had tried to kill them. The galaxy thought it had discarded humanity's worst. Instead, it had forged them into something new. The council chamber was a testament to human stubbornness, carved into the living rock of the crater wall, reinforced with salvaged starship hull plating and heated by geothermal vents that made the air shimmer like a desert mirage. The 5 figures seated around the crescent-shaped table represented every mistake the galaxy had made in trying to contain humanity's worst impulses. Riven Caulfield took her place at the council's right hand, her cybernetic arm gleaming under the harsh industrial lighting. To her left sat Jackson Ironwright, a former terraforming engineer whose experimental atmospheric processors had been deemed too aggressive by the consortium, largely because they had a tendency to make worlds habitable by first making them uninhabitable for everything else. The council's center was occupied by Zara Night Whisper, whose slight frame and prematurely gray hair belied her reputation as the galaxy's most wanted information broker. She'd earned her exile by exposing corruption in the consortium senate, burning half the government's black sites in the process. Her eyes, augmented with illegal neural interfaces, flickered with data streams as she processed information at superhuman speeds. Flanking the table's far end were the twins, Dex and Rex Stormcaller, former asteroid miners who'd discovered that their mining charges made excellent improvised weapons during the Belt Wars. Their scarred hands never strayed, far from the plasma cutters at their belts, tools that had carved through more than just rock. "Captain Morven," Zara's voice carried the mechanical undertone of someone who'd integrated too deeply with machine intelligence. "Your message mentioned a job that would make the consortium regret every human they ever threw away." "Interesting. Hyperbole." Vex activated his portable holo projector, filling the chamber with the image of a massive space station, a ring of gleaming metal wrapped around a captured asteroid, bristling with defensive weapons and diplomatic towers. "This is Harmony Station, the consortium's crown jewel. Every major trade route in 3 sectors passes through their checkpoints. Every species with galactic ambitions sends ambassadors to kiss their collective ass. And they're hosting the Centennial Peace Summit in 6 standard months," Riven added, her augmented eye gleaming as it accessed the station's public records. "Representatives from every major civilization signing treaties that'll shape the next century of galactic politics." "Without any human input," Jackson growled, his engineer's mind already calculating the station's structural weaknesses. "They carved up human space like a Thanksgiving turkey and handed the pieces to their pet species." Dex Stormcaller leaned forward, his scarred face splitting in a predatory grin. "You want to crash their party?" "I want to do more than that," Vex replied, expanding the hologram to show the station's internal structure. "I want to remind the galaxy what happens when you underestimate human ingenuity. See, Harmony Station has a fatal flaw. It was designed by committee, with representatives from every member species contributing their expertise." The image zoomed in on the station's power core, a fusion reactor designed with Altarian efficiency principles, Zephyrian safety protocols, and vegan environmental considerations. It was a masterpiece of diplomatic compromise, and therefore completely predictable. "The reactor core is accessible through 17 different maintenance routes," Zara observed, her augmented eyes processing the schematics faster than organic vision could follow. "But the security is layered like an onion. Motion sensors, biometric locks, quantum encryption. All designed to stop civilized beings," Vex interrupted. "They've planned for every contingency except one, humans who don't play by the rules." Rex Stormcaller chuckled, a sound like grinding metal. "What makes you think we can get close to that fortress?" Vex's smile turned predatory. "Because they're going to invite us in. You see, the consortium has a problem. Despite all their posturing about peace and cooperation, they still need someone to handle the jobs that would soil their pristine reputations. Pirates that need exterminating, rebels that need pacifying, criminal organizations that need aggressive negotiation." The hologram shifted to show a new image, a sleek corporate logo reading Morven Solutions, Diplomatic Problem Solving. "We're going to register as a legitimate security contractor," Vex continued. "Our credentials will be impeccable, our references glowing, our corporate structure so clean it squeaks. And when they need muscle for the summit, security that won't ask awkward questions about their methods, they'll hire the best money can buy." "And once we're inside," Riven asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. Then we show them what humanity's discards can accomplish when properly motivated. The council chamber fell silent except for the distant rumble of the planet's industrial heart. Outside, chemical storms lashed the settlement's walls. But inside, 5 of humanity's most dangerous outcasts contemplated a job that would either make them legends or get them killed. Finally, Zara spoke, her augmented voice carrying harmonics of electronic amusement. "The payment? Revenge," Vex replied simply. "And the chance to watch the galaxy's puppeteers dance to our tune for once." 6 weeks later, the corporate offices of Morven Solutions occupied 3 floors of a gleaming tower on Nexus Prime, the consortium's primary commercial hub. The transformation was complete. Gone were the scarred walls and makeshift equipment of Grief's End, replaced by polished surfaces and cutting-edge technology that proclaimed success and respectability. Vex stood before a floor-to-ceiling window, watching shuttle traffic flow between the orbital platforms like streams of liquid light. His appearance had been carefully crafted: expensive suit, subtle cosmetic surgery to hide the worst scars, neural implants that displayed the latest market, data directly into his visual cortex. To the casual observer, he was just another successful corporate executive, only his eyes remained unchanged, still carrying the cold calculation of someone who'd survived too many battlefields. "The Vorthan Syndicate contract is complete," Kira reported from behind her new executive desk, her navigator's instincts now channeled into logistics and operational planning. "Their pirate problem has been resolved. The survivors are requesting asylum." "Denied," Vex replied without turning. "Dead men tell no tales, but terrified ones spread reputations." Through the window, he could see the construction platforms surrounding Harmony Station, automated systems adding final touches to the defensive arrays and diplomatic facilities. The station was beautiful in its own way, a monument to cooperative engineering and peaceful coexistence. It would make its destruction all the more poetic. "The Altarian Commercial Guild is requesting a consultation," Kira continued, scrolling through their priority messages. "Apparently they have a labor dispute that requires creative solutions. They're offering triple rates for discretion. Accept it, but send the twins. They enjoy creative problem-solving." Vex finally turned from the window, his reflection ghost-like in the polished glass. "Any word from our inside sources?" "Zara's network has been busy. The Consortium Security Council is nervous about the summit. Too many high-value targets in one location, too many opportunities for embarrassment. They've been quietly recruiting additional security contractors, but they want firms with appropriate credentials and cultural sensitivity." Vex's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "How convenient that we've spent the last month proving our cultural sensitivity by efficiently pacifying 3 different species." The door chimed, and Riven entered wearing the uniform of a corporate security chief. Her cybernetic arm had been upgraded with civilian-grade components that looked less threatening, though Vex knew she could still tear a bulkhead apart with her bare hands. Her expression carried news. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "The hegemony of Krell is sending a delegation to the summit. They're bringing their own security, a full battle group of their elite Deathsworn." Vex frowned. The Krell were one of the few species that had never underestimated human military capabilities, largely because they shared humanity's appreciation for violence as an art form. Their warriors were genetically engineered for combat, bred in artificial wombs, and trained from birth to be perfect killing machines. "How many?" he asked. 200. They'll be stationed on combat ships in the outer system, with a ceremonial guard of 50 accompanying their ambassador. Riven's augmented eye flickered as she accessed classified files. But here's the interesting part. Their security chief is Warlord Kane Bloodforge, and he specifically requested intelligence files on any human contractors working the summit. The name sent a chill through the room. Kane Bloodforge had earned His reputation during the Frontier Wars, where his tactical brilliance had turned human colonies into graveyards. He was one of the few alien commanders who understood that humans were most dangerous when they appeared defeated. He suspects something, Kira observed. No, Vex corrected, his mind already calculating new possibilities. He's being cautious. The Krell respect strength, and they know that exiled humans have a tendency to exceed expectations. He walked to his desk and activated the secure communications array. It's time to accelerate our timeline. Contact Jackson and tell him to begin Phase 2 preparations. And get me a meeting with the Consortium Security Council. It's time for Morven Solutions to make a more personal impression. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the face of Admiral Titus Graveborn, the Consortium's chief of security. The man's augmented features and military bearing spoke of a career spent in the shadows, handling problems that official forces couldn't touch. Mr. Morven. The Admiral's voice carried the weight of authority and suspicion in equal measure. Your company's reputation precedes you. 3 successful operations, 0 diplomatic incidents, and absolutely no survivors to complicate the aftermath. Impressive work. We provide solutions, Admiral. Clean, efficient, and permanent. Which is exactly what we need for the Centennial Summit. The galaxy will be watching, and we cannot afford complications. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. I'm prepared to offer you an exclusive contract. Full security coordination for the summit, with authority to handle any threats that emerge. The compensation will be considerable. Vex allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The trap was closing, and the prey was walking in willingly. We accept, Admiral. Humanity's best will ensure your summit proceeds without incident. Neither man mentioned that humanity's best might have very different definitions of success. 3 months before the summit, Harmony Station buzzed with activity that would have impressed even Earth's old United Nations during its most ambitious moments. The station's diplomatic quarter had been expanded with modular habitats designed to accommodate the environmental needs of 24 different species, while the security sections bulged with defensive systems that could have protected a small. Fleet Vex walked through the diplomatic promenade, his security chief credentials granting him access to areas that would normally require months of background checks. Around him, the galaxy's elite mingled in carefully choreographed displays of peaceful cooperation, Altarian trade princes discussing mineral rights with vegan ecological advisors, while Centaurian philosophers debated ethics with synthetic intelligences from the Nexus Collective. None of them paid attention to the human in the expensive suit, just another contractor ensuring their safety. Phase 3 preparations are complete, Jackson's voice whispered through Vex's neural implant. The former terraforming engineer had spent weeks infiltrating the station's environmental systems, his credentials as an atmospheric specialist granting him access to the very air the delegates breathed. The atmospheric processors are now responsive to alternative programming. Understood. Execute on my signal. Vex paused before a viewing port that looked out into the void where the assembled fleets of 12 civilizations maintained their ceremonial formations. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering and a statement of power, their hulls gleaming with the confidence of species that had never known true defeat. His reflection in the reinforced glass showed a man who had learned that defeat was just another tool properly wielded. The Krell battle group hung at the formation's edge like a cluster of obsidian daggers. Even at this distance, their ships radiated menace, angular designs that prioritized firepower over aesthetics, built by a species that understood war as both science and art. Somewhere among those vessels, Warlord Kane Bloodforge was undoubtedly studying intelligence files and preparing contingencies. Sir, Kira's voice joined the private channel. We have a development. The Consortium Council has approved additional security measures, automated defense platforms, quantum surveillance, grids, and psi dampers to prevent telepathic espionage. They're taking no chances. Good. Vex replied. "The more security they add, the more spectacular our demonstration will be. Status on the twins?" "Dex and Rex have successfully joined the maintenance crews," Riven reported. "Their mining experience makes them ideal candidates for structural repairs. They're currently installing upgraded safety systems throughout the station's critical infrastructure." Vex allowed himself a cold smile. The Stormcaller twins had a talent for making explosives look like safety equipment, a skill they'd perfected. During their years in the asteroid belts, where the line between mining and warfare was often measured in seconds. "And our inside intelligence?" "Zara has penetrated their command networks," Kira confirmed. "She's feeding us real-time security protocols, shift rotations, and communication frequencies. The consortium's left side doesn't know what its right side is doing." The promenade around him continued its performance of galactic harmony, diplomats and trade representatives discussing treaties that would shape the next century of civilization. They spoke of resource allocation, territorial boundaries, and cultural exchange programs, all the mechanisms by which the strong maintained their grip on power, while the weak convinced themselves they had a voice. None of them mentioned humanity, except in passing brief references to the former colonial territories that had been peacefully redistributed among the consortium's member species. Earth's children had been scattered to the winds, their worlds carved up like prizes, their people relegated to footnotes in galactic history. That was about to change. "All teams, this is Patriarch," Vex spoke into his implant, using the code name they'd agreed upon. "We are now in the final phase. In 72 hours, the Centennial Summit begins. In 73 hours, the galaxy learns that humanity's bastards don't stay buried." The responses came back through encrypted channels, acknowledgments from scattered cells of humans who had spent their lives being told they were worthless, dangerous, expendable. Former soldiers who'd been cashiered for excessive violence. Scientists whose research had been deemed too radical, engineers whose innovations had been suppressed for being too disruptive, criminals whose only crime had been surviving in a galaxy that wanted them dead. They were the dregs of humanity, the outcasts and the broken. They were also the most dangerous force the galaxy had never seen coming. As Vex walked through the diplomatic quarter, he noticed something that filled him with professional satisfaction. The security forces, despite their numbers and equipment, moved with the confidence of those who had never faced a truly desperate enemy. Their protocols were designed for conventional threats: assassins, terrorists, foreign intelligence operatives. They had prepared for every contingency except the most obvious one. What happened when humanity's discarded children decided to come home? Behind him, through the viewing port, the assembled fleets of the galaxy maintained their perfect formations, symbols of order and civilization. Soon they would learn that chaos was just order that hadn't revealed its pattern yet. The Centennial Summit's opening ceremony was a masterwork of diplomatic theater. The Grand Assembly Hall had been designed to accommodate representatives from every major civilization, with environmental controls maintaining perfect atmospheric conditions for species ranging from the aquatic depths dwellers to the crystalline resonance collective. Holographic displays provided real-time translation in over 300 languages, while ceremonial guards from a dozen different military traditions maintained perfect discipline around the hall's perimeter. Ambassador Lysander Void Whisper of the Altarian Trade Confederation stood at the central podium, his blue-scaled features reflecting the carefully programmed lighting as he delivered the opening address. His words spoke of unity, prosperity, and the bright future that awaited a galaxy finally free from the chaos of primitive conflicts. Vex watched from the security monitoring station, his eyes tracking the feeds from hundreds of cameras and sensors. Around him, Consortium security officers maintained professional vigilance, their attention focused on external threats and potential disruptions. None of them suspected that the greatest danger to their perfect order was standing among them, wearing their uniform and carrying their authorization codes. "Beautiful ceremony," commented Commander Thane Ironside, the Consortium's deputy security chief. The man's augmented features and military bearing marked him as a veteran of the pacification campaigns, one of the officers who'd overseen humanity's peaceful transition to consortium oversight. Almost makes you forget how messy things used to be when primitive species tried to handle their own affairs. Indeed, Vex replied, his voice carrying just the right note of professional agreement. Order is always preferable to chaos. Through his neural implant, status reports flowed from his scattered team. Jackson had completed his modifications to the atmospheric processors, introducing nanoscale components that would respond to specific activation codes. The Stormcaller twins had finished installing their safety systems throughout the station's infrastructure, creating a web of precisely placed charges that could reshape the facility's architecture in creative ways. Riven's security teams had integrated seamlessly with the consortium forces, their brutal efficiency mistaken for professional competence. And somewhere in the depths of the station's computer networks, Zara Nightwhisper was weaving through quantum-encrypted data streams like a ghost in the machine. "Sir," Kira's voice whispered through the implant, "we have movement from the Krell. Battle Group. Warlord Bloodforge is requesting permission to board the station for a security consultation." Vex felt his pulse quicken. The Krell warlord's arrival would add an unpredictable element to their carefully orchestrated plan. Bloodforge was one of the few alien commanders who truly understood human tactical thinking, and his presence could complicate everything. "Patch me through to Admiral Graveborn," Vex commanded. The Admiral's holographic image materialized in the corner of his vision, the man's augmented features showing signs of stress. "Morven, we have a situation. The Krell are getting nervous about something. Their security chief is demanding a face-to-face briefing on our protective measures." "I can handle that, Admiral. My team has extensive experience dealing with Krell. Military protocols." Vex kept his voice steady, professional. "What's his specific concern?" "He's convinced there's a human element in the station's security arrangements that presents a potential risk. Apparently, his intelligence files contain some disturbing information about human resourcefulness when cornered." Vex allowed himself a moment of dark amusement. Bloodforge's intelligence was more accurate than he knew. There was indeed a human element present, and it was about to demonstrate exactly how resourceful cornered humans could be. "I'll meet with him personally, Admiral." Professional to professional. The communication ended, and Vex began moving through the station's corridors toward the docking bay. Around him, the summit continued its performance of civilized discourse, delegates from across the galaxy discussing trade agreements and territorial boundaries with the casual confidence of those who had never faced existential threat. That confidence was about to be tested. The Krell shuttle was a study in functional menace, black armor plating covered with angular designs that served both aesthetic and tactical purposes. As it docked with Harmony Station, automated systems scanned its hull and confirmed the identity of its passengers, Warlord Caney Bloodforge and his personal guard. Vex waited in the receiving chamber, flanked by his own security detail. When the airlock cycled open, the figure that emerged was everything his reputation suggested. Over 2 meters tall, his genetically enhanced frame covered in ceremonial armor that had seen real combat. Scars decorated his exposed flesh like badges of honor, while his 4 eyes tracked potential threats with predatory intensity. "Captain Morven," Bloodforge's voice carried harmonics that could freeze blood, the result of vocal modifications designed to intimidate enemy combatants. "Your reputation precedes you, as does yours, Warlord. Your tactical analyses of human military doctrine are required reading in certain circles." Bloodforge's secondary eyes focused on Vex with uncomfortable intensity. "Yes, I have made extensive study of your species' approach to warfare, particularly the tendency to treat desperate situations as opportunities rather than defeats. An interesting observation. Perhaps we could discuss it further in private?" The Krell warlord's primary eyes never left Vex's face as he dismissed his guards with a gesture. When they were alone in the chamber, Bloodforge activated a privacy field that would defeat most surveillance systems. "You know why I am here," he said simply. "You suspect that human involvement in this summit's security represents a potential threat to galactic stability?" Vex replied carefully. "I suspect that when humans are backed into a corner with nothing left to lose, they become capable of things that reshape the strategic landscape." Bloodforge moved closer, his presence filling the chamber like a storm front. "My question is simple, Captain Morven. Are you here to protect this summit or to make it unforgettable?" Vex met the alien warrior's gaze without flinching. In that moment, he felt the weight of every human world that had been carved up, every colony that had been redistributed, every child of Earth who had been told they were worthless and expendable. "What would you do, Warlord, if your people were scattered to the winds and forgotten by history?" Bloodforge's 4 eyes gleamed with something that might have been respect. "I would remind the galaxy why we were feared in the first place. The explosion came at Aero 347 station time, during the summit's second day when most delegates were sleeping in their carefully climate-controlled quarters. It wasn't large, barely enough to breach a single compartment in the station's outer ring, but its timing and location were perfect. The blast originated in a maintenance section that housed critical atmospheric monitoring equipment, sending cascading system failures through the environmental controls. Within minutes, emergency klaxons echoed through Harmony Station's corridors, as automated systems struggled to compensate for the damage. The diplomatic quarters' life support began fluctuating wildly. Temperature spikes in the Altarian sections, pressure drops in the Vegan quarters, humidity failures that threatened the aquatic delegates' survival. Vex arrived at the emergency command center before most of the senior staff, his security credentials granting him immediate access to the crisis management protocols. Around him, consortium officers rushed to coordinate repair teams and manage the growing chaos, their professional calm beginning to crack under the pressure of multiple simultaneous failures. "Status report," Admiral Graveborn's voice cut through the noise as his holographic image materialized above the central command table. "Minor structural breach in Section 12, Commander Ironside reported, his augmented features flickering as he processed incoming data streams. "But the secondary failures are cascading faster than our repair protocols can handle. We're looking at potential life support failures in 3 different environmental zones. Cause?" Graveborn's expression was granite hard. "Unknown. The blast pattern suggests an industrial accident, maybe a power coupling overload, but the timing is suspicious." Ironside's eyes found Vex across the command center. "Mr. Morven, your security teams have been monitoring the maintenance areas. Any unusual activity?" Vex moved to the central display, his fingers dancing across the control interface as he brought up security footage from the affected sections. The images showed normal maintenance activity, workers in standard environmental suits going about. Their routine tasks, nothing suspicious, nothing that would raise alarms, exactly as planned. "I'm not seeing anything obvious," he reported, allowing just the right note of professional concern to color his voice. "But I recommend we implement emergency lockdown protocols for all critical systems until we can complete a full security sweep." "Agreed," Graveborn's image nodded. "Authorization code Omega 77. Full lockdown, all non-essential personnel to quarters." The command went out across the station's communication network, and Vex felt a moment of satisfaction as thousands of beings were suddenly confined to their sections. The lockdown would prevent most movement through the station, effectively trapping the delegates in their quarters while creating perfect cover for his team's final preparations. "Sir?" Kira's voice whispered through his neural implant. "Jackson reports atmospheric modifications are now active in all diplomatic quarters. He can selectively adjust oxygen levels, introduce sedatives, or create more dramatic effects on command." "Understood. What's the status on our Krell problem?" "Warlord Bloodforge has returned to his ship, but his shuttle didn't undock. Intelligence suggests he's maintaining a rapid response team aboard the station." That was troubling but not unexpected. Bloodforge was too experienced to be fooled by a simple industrial accident, and his presence on the station meant he was prepared for human treachery. The question was whether he would act to stop it or simply observe the chaos with professional interest. The command center's main display flickered as new alerts cascaded across the screen. System failures were spreading through the stations. Infrastructure, not enough to cause immediate danger, but sufficient to strain resources and create the atmosphere of barely controlled crisis that Vex needed. Multiple subsystem failures, Commander Ironside reported, his voice tight with stress. It's like the station's having a nervous breakdown. Every repair we complete triggers 2 more problems elsewhere. That's not possible. Graveborn's image leaned forward. Harmony Station was designed with triple redundant safety systems. We should be able to isolate and contain any cascade failures. Vex stepped forward, his expression carefully crafted to show professional competence mixed with growing concern. Admiral, with respect, the station's safety systems were designed by committee. Each species contributed their own protocols and fail-safes, but nobody tested how they'd interact under extreme stress. It was a masterful lie, built on the foundation of bureaucratic truth. The station's systems had indeed been designed by committee, which made them predictably vulnerable to the kind of systematic sabotage that humans excelled at. "What do you recommend?" Graveborn asked. "We need to compartmentalize the problems, shut down affected sections, and run manual overrides on critical systems. It'll require all hands, but we can stabilize the situation." Vex paused for dramatic effect. Of course, that means pulling security teams away from the diplomatic quarters. The Admiral's augmented features processed the implications quickly. With reduced security coverage, the delegates would be more vulnerable to threats, but the alternative was potential system collapse that could kill everyone aboard. Do it. Authorization Omega 99. All security teams to infrastructure support. Minimum viable coverage on diplomatic areas. Vex allowed himself a moment of cold satisfaction as the orders went out. The Admiral had just authorized the withdrawal of most security forces from the areas his team needed to access. The delegates were now protected by skeleton crews, automated systems, and the assumption that external threats were more dangerous than internal ones. It was time for humanity's bastards to remind the galaxy why that assumption was usually fatal. "All teams, this is Patriarch," he whispered into his neural implant. "Execute final phase. Show them what the children of Earth learned in the darkness between the stars." The responses came back in carefully coded acknowledgments, and Vex began moving toward his final objective. Around him, the crisis continued to deepen as carefully orchestrated failures spread through Harmony Station's systems like a virus designed to target civilized thinking. The summit delegates, trapped in their quarters and dependent on life support, systems that were increasingly unreliable, were about to receive an education in the fundamental difference between order and chaos. And in the outer system, Warlord Bloodforge watched from his command ship as the galaxy's symbol of peaceful cooperation began its transformation into something far more interesting. The transformation of Harmony Station from symbol of galactic unity to theater of calculated chaos unfolded with the precision of a military operation and the artistry of a well-orchestrated symphony. As system failures cascaded through the diplomatic quarter, Vex and his team moved through the station's corridors like ghosts, their security credentials opening every door and their reputation as problem solvers, ensuring that no one questioned their presence in sensitive areas. The Altarian delegation was the first to experience humanity's particular brand of creative problem-solving. As their environmental controls flickered between extremes, Ambassador Voidwhisper found himself sweating in his ceremonial robes while his aide frantically tried to contact station security. When Vex arrived with a repair team, the grateful Altarians welcomed them with relief that quickly turned to confusion as sedatives in their atmospheric supply took effect. "Don't be alarmed, Ambassador," Vex said as the blue-scaled diplomat slumped in his chair, consciousness fading. "You're about to witness history being made." Similar scenes played out across the diplomatic quarter as the Stormcaller twins' safety systems revealed their true purpose. Precisely placed charges didn't destroy the station's structure. Instead, they selectively sealed bulkheads, rerouted corridors, and created isolated pockets where individual delegations found themselves trapped with their worst fears made manifest. The Centaurian philosophers, who prided themselves on logical discourse, discovered their quarters filled with impossible paradoxes projected as holograms, statements that challenged their fundamental assumptions about reality and logic. The synthetic intelligences of the Nexus Collective found their quantum processing cores bombarded with recursive algorithms that forced them to contemplate the nature of consciousness and free will. Each species faced a customized nightmare designed to shatter their certainties and force them to confront uncomfortable truths about their place in the galaxy. But the centerpiece of Vex's performance was reserved for the Grand Assembly Hall, where the summit's final session was scheduled to take place. As delegates who hadn't been sedated or trapped were herded toward the hall by security protocols, they found themselves in an amphitheater that had been transformed into something far more ominous than a diplomatic meeting place. The chambers. Walls now displayed images from across human space, worlds that had been stripped of their resources and abandoned, colonies that had been peacefully redistributed to other species, refugee ships that had disappeared in the void between stars. The faces of Earth's children, scattered and forgotten, stared down at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Welcome, beings of the galaxy, to a moment of truth. Vex's voice echoed through the hall's acoustic systems as he stepped onto the central platform, no longer bothering to maintain the facade of respectful contractor. Around him, his team took positions at strategic points, their weapons visible but not yet threatening. The message was clear. Violence was possible, but not yet necessary. For 100 years, you have congratulated yourselves on bringing peace to the galaxy, he continued, his words simultaneously translated into hundreds of languages. You carved up human space like a feast, distributed our worlds among yourselves, and told each other that you were civilizing the barbarians. The assembled delegates, those who remained conscious and mobile, stirred uneasily in their seats. Some reached for communication devices, only to find their signals blocked by jamming fields that Zara had woven through the station's networks like invisible chains. But you made a fundamental error in your calculations, Vex's voice carried, the weight of accumulated grievances, each word measured and deliberate. You assumed that broken things stay broken, that scattered pieces cannot reassemble themselves into something new and terrible. Ambassador Lysander Void Whisper, his blue, scales pale with fear and residual sedatives, managed to speak from his position near the front of the assembly. This is an act of terrorism. The consortium will not negotiate with terrorists? Vex's laugh was sharp enough to cut atmosphere. No, Ambassador, terrorists have political goals, reasonable demands, exit strategies. We are something far more dangerous. We are the consequences of your actions, given form and purpose. The main display shifted to show real-time feeds from across the galaxy. Human settlements on marginal worlds, scraping survival from poisoned soil and toxic atmospheres. Refugee fleets drifting between systems, their inhabitants slowly dying of malnutrition and despair. Children born in the dark between stars, who had never seen a planet's surface or breathed unfiltered air. Every human you see on these screens has something in common, Vex continued, his voice growing cold with controlled fury. They were told they were worthless, expendable, the genetic mistakes of a primitive species that had outlived its usefulness. In the diplomatic quarter, automated systems continued their programmed chaos. The Vegan ecological advisors found themselves trapped in chambers where the atmospheric composition shifted between extremes, forcing them to experience the kind of environmental collapse their policies had inflicted on abandoned human worlds. The crystalline entities of the Resonance Collective discovered that their harmonic communication frequencies were being jammed, leaving them isolated and unable to maintain their collective consciousness. "You created us," Vex said, spreading his arms to encompass not just his team, but the broader concept they represented. "Every human you discarded, every colony you wrote off, every ship you turned away from your ports, all of it forged us into something you were not prepared to face." Warlord Bloodforge's voice suddenly echoed through the chamber as his image materialized in holographic form. The Krell commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, his 4 eyes focused on Vex with something that might have been professional admiration. "An impressive demonstration, Captain Morven," the alien warrior said. "You have successfully infiltrated and neutralized the galaxy's most secure facility using nothing but misdirection and exploited assumptions. My tactical analysis computers are still processing the implications." "Thank you, Warlord. I learned from studying your campaigns during the Frontier Wars." "Indeed. The question now becomes, what is your endgame? You have proven your point most effectively. The galaxy's leaders are at your mercy, their security completely compromised. What do you intend to do with this victory?" The assembled delegates leaned forward despite their fear, recognizing that this might be their only chance to understand what the humans wanted. Ransom? Political concessions? The return of human territories? Vex was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his words carried the weight of a species' accumulated pain. "We don't want your territories back. The worlds you gave away were already poisoned by your neglect. We don't want your wealth. We've learned to create value from the waste you discard. We don't even want your deaths, though many of you deserve them." He paused, letting the tension build as his words were translated and processed by hundreds of different forms of intelligence. "What we want is for you to remember this moment. To remember that the humans you threw away didn't disappear. We adapted. We learned. We became something that your orderly minds cannot fully comprehend." The station shuddered as the Stormcaller twins activated another sequence of their safety systems, rerouting power and atmosphere in ways that made the artificial gravity fluctuate. Delegates who had been sitting comfortably suddenly found themselves clinging to their seats as the fundamental assumptions of their environment proved unreliable. Every time you make a decision about managing a troublesome species, remember today. Every time you consider writing off a group of beings as expendable, think about what they might become when you're not watching. Because somewhere in the dark between the stars, the bastards you discarded are learning to thrive, Zara's voice whispered through the chamber's speakers, her augmented consciousness manifesting as pure information. "All station systems are now under our control. Life support, artificial gravity, atmospheric composition, structural integrity, everything that keeps you alive in the void is subject to our whims. But we won't use that power," Vex continued. "Not today. Instead, we're going to let you live, with the knowledge that we could have. That for a few hours, the fate of galactic civilization rested in the hands of the people you considered beneath notice." Admiral Graveborn's voice cut through the chamber's speakers, transmitted from the secure command bunker where he'd retreated when the crisis began. "What are your demands? What will it take to end this?" "Nothing," Vex replied simply. "We don't want anything from you because we've learned to take what we need. This demonstration isn't a negotiation, it's a graduation ceremony." The main display shifted one final time, showing images that made several delegates gasp in recognition. Human settlements that weren't struggling refugee camps but thriving communities built from salvaged technology. Starships that combined the best engineering principles from a dozen species, constructed in hidden shipyards using techniques that no single civilization possessed. Military formations that moved with the precision of machines and the cunning of predators. the galaxies. "Bastards have grown up," Vex announced. "We've built our own civilization from the pieces you threw away. We've learned to turn your weapons against each other, to exploit the weaknesses in your alliances, to transform disadvantage into strength." Warlord Bloodforge's image nodded slowly, his tactical mind processing the implications. "You have successfully demonstrated that isolated human populations, given sufficient time and motivation, can develop capabilities that exceed the sum of their apparent resources. This will require significant revision of our strategic assessments. More than that, Warlord, it will require a fundamental shift in how you think about power. You've spent centuries believing that strength comes from size, from resources, from the ability to impose order on chaos. But humans have learned a different truth, that chaos is just order waiting to reveal its pattern. As if to demonstrate the point, the station's systems suddenly stabilized. The cascading failures ceased, the environmental controls returned to normal, and the emergency lighting was replaced by standard illumination. In moments, Harmony Station transformed from a ship in crisis to a facility operating at peak efficiency. "We're going to leave now," Vex announced, his team already moving toward the exits with the same professional precision they'd displayed throughout the operation. "You can return to your summit, sign your treaties, and pretend that nothing has changed. But deep down, you'll know the truth." "Which is?" Ambassador Void Whisper asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Vex paused at the chamber's entrance, turning back to address the assembled representatives of galactic civilization one final time. "That humanity's bastards don't stay buried. We rise from the grave you dug for us, and we remember every slight, every betrayal, every moment you told us we were worthless. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, we're building something that will make your nightmares seem like pleasant dreams." The holographic displays went dark, the emergency lighting returned to normal, and the chamber's acoustic systems returned to their default settings. When security forces finally breached the sealed doors minutes later, they found only empty seats and the lingering echo of words that would haunt galactic politics for generations to come. The Carrion's Gambit departed Harmony Station without interference, its transponder identifying it as a routine maintenance vessel returning to base. By the time the consortium realized what had happened, Vex and his team were already jumping to hyperspace, leaving behind a galaxy that would never again make the mistake of underestimating humanity's discarded children. In the years that followed, the Centennial Summit would be remembered not for the treaties signed or the alliances forged, but for the moment when the galaxy learned that some scars never heal. They just learned to burn brighter in the darkness of space. And in hidden bases scattered across the void, the children of Earth continued their education, turning waste into weapons and transforming abandonment into advantage, preparing for the day when the galaxy would discover just how creative broken things could become when properly motivated. The bastards of Earth had become the champions of space, and their scars burned bright against the infinite dark, a reminder that some species don't just survive extinction, they evolve beyond it.